July 28th, 2026, the Tooele School District number 406 regular board meeting, and will come to order. Starting with our roll call. Director Larson, if you could please send, please.
Dave Larson, Director, District 5.
Terrence Proctor, District 4.
Ara Papian, Director, District number 3.
Mitch Forehand, Director of District 1.
Arden Russell, sophomore student ratification.
All right, perfect. And welcome to all our guests, both in person and online. We will be leading into our flag salute. For those who wish to stand, please do.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Getting into our land and labor acknowledgement, which I will take over. We in the Tooele School District acknowledge that the land where we teach, collaborate, learn, and play is the traditional land of the first people of the Seattle, the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people, past and present, and honor with gratitude the land itself and the Duwamish and Muckleshoot tribes. As a public school district, we have a responsibility for the stewardship of this land, and we strive to work alongside the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people who have been living and working here since time immemorial. For our labor acknowledgement, we further acknowledge that the burden of environmental exploitation and systemic injustice falls upon the labor of Black and Brown bodies in the building of this country and its institutions. We remember that Black and Brown people were born and died working this land against their will for generations. We also acknowledge the continued contribution of the labor of survivors over the centuries to today. Of all immigrant labor, including voluntary and involuntary trafficked, forced, and undocumented peoples in the building of what we refer to as the United States. As a school district leadership, we pledge to recognize and work against systems that have historically and currently enforced and create inequities among the people we serve. And then moving into our values and group agreements. I'm not going to read it in full, but our values and group agreements go from transparency, courage, righteousness, curiosity, respect with centering humanity. With centering humanity, I will read that one. Find out what respect means to each other, active listening, seeing the whole person, recognizing what each of us might be bringing to in that day, ask what would be the impact on the people. Okay, moving in for the approval of the agenda, the board or the chair recommends an amendment to our current agenda with the action item of accepting the resignation of Director Greg Sherlock in District 2 being added to our current agenda.
So you want to put that like right after 2A immediately, or?
Well, we can do that right after 2A, right before public comment.
Okay,
Yeah.
Sounds good. Second.
Okay, so it is motioned and seconded that we will be accepting the resignation of Greg Sherlock of Director Seat 2 after our approval of agenda before our public comment. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. The amendments are adopted. Having said that, now we will, actually, does the chair have a motion to accept the resignation of Director Greg Sherlock of District 2?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that we will accept the resignation of Greg Sherlock of Director District 2. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. As have it, that is accepted. All right, moving into public comment. Is there any public comment? Yes. Anastasia Shapiro. Did I say that correctly?
Yes. You guys come through.
Yes.
Amazing.
Ready?
Awesome. No, I just wanted, so my name's Anastasia Shapiro. I'm the aquatics director over the Tooele Pool, just up the street here. And so I just wanted to publicly say thank you to Courtney Martinez, the PE teacher over at Thorndike Elementary, as well as all of the 4th grade teachers at Tooele Elementary, specifically long-term sub John Forsyth, who helped steward our water safety program this last May and June. We were able to serve over 100 kids with Courtney Martinez's class, doing our water safety education. We did a lot of on-land work with them, dry land work, doing a lot of reach or throw and go, life jacket safety, et cetera. And then we were also able to welcome our fourth graders from Tukwila Elementary to the pool, to give them a tour of the facility, as well as do some other water safety lessons, CPR programming, things like that. So it was 3 days total, so 2 days with Courtney and then 1 day against the fourth graders over at Tukwila Elementary. So we just specifically wanted to thank those teachers for being so open and helping push the water safety initiative in our schools. So just want to give a big thank you and shout out and to Tukwila Schools for supporting that initiative.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. Did we have anything online? Okay. Well, if that's the case, we will be moving into our report section. Starting with our student reports. Student Director Russell, if you would.
I've been working on a summer camp this summer, so I wasn't at the last meeting, but since the end of the school year, me and the theater director have been working a lot on the design for the set of our next musical, Cinderella. We're both very excited to see what we're gonna be able to create. That's all. Not pretty uneventful.
It is summer.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for your report.
Mhm.
All right. Moving over to Director Larson, if you would.
So I've been working on, there's a group that was, a work group that was launched by the state legislature a couple of years ago to examine the funding system and make it, come out with some recommendations to make it more equitable, the state funding system for K-12 education in Washington State. And there's a little, so Dr. Rose is on the bigger group. There was a smaller group launched from that group to kind of come up with specific recommendations. And so I'm in that group, and it's been going pretty well. There's going to be a whole bunch of, there's going to be some interesting recommendations coming out of there. I'm pushing several new ones. They're considering them, but just to let people know what the, so there's several ways in the current funding system that you can channel more dollars to schools and districts that have higher needs students. So the first idea that's going to be recommendation, this is a recommendation that's going to come out of the group and go to Superintendent Rekdal and OSBI. He's going to consider it, and he'll make some recommendations to the governor and the legislature. And so there's a fair amount of process that's going to go through on these, but it's important to get the ideas into the system so they can consider them. So the first one is one that, you know, is of interest because it's fully funding the transportation of McKinney-Vento students or students that are experiencing homelessness. So for us, we have about $150,000 deficit in that category, which we're having to use our local levy money to cover these various gaps. So if they would actually fund that, that would be very helpful. The second one is the whole area of material supply and operating costs. We call them MSOCs. And we have a huge deficit in there. And this is a new proposal I hadn't heard before, but they're going to come out with a recommendation to add $100 in MSOC money for every student that's in one of the categorical programs, which means students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, students that qualify for ELL status, students that qualify for high cap status. And so that would be really, really helpful for us at $100 per student. You know, that's a couple $100,000 for us if they do that. So that's something that will be interesting to watch, and will probably come out as a recommendation. We'll see how it flows through. The other area is what's called the Learning Assistance Program, which is the only funding program from the state that provides money to school districts based on the number of students that qualify for free and reduced lunch. And this is a bill I've been working on for years. It's a bill that's been sitting down and it's been working its way through the legislature, but it's basically providing more LAP money for high poverty schools. So that is schools that are, 50%, 60%, 70%. This would help our district a lot, another to the tune of a couple $100,000 if it were to get through. That one's going to be probably recommended. Another one, which is actually was approved by the voters like in 2014, and that was to have smaller class sizes for high poverty schools. So that's another several $100,000 if that one gets through. The legislature at the time, it was an initiative 1351, the voters approved it, and then the legislators ignored it. Basically, they funded the lower class size of poverty for 1 year, and then they took it away, and it was equal again. So that one, we'll see how that flies. That's another one, and then the big one that I'm kind of one of the ones that I'm working on to try and find a legislator to sponsor this one, but so there's a whole set of support staff that goes to schools. So this is counselors, social workers, nurses, parent engagement folks, all these different support staff and paraeducators. And right now, the way the state funds it is, it's the same allocation for every school. So regardless of a very wealthy school is going to get the same allocation as a school that's serving low-income students and high ELL and high McKinney-Vento and all that. So, and that just that's not equitable. That doesn't make any sense. You'd be pushing more money. So that one, I've got several specific proposals that I put to them, and we'll see what they do with them. One of them is to fund the equivalent of what we call our two quality engagement specialists. Those are the Julie and Marianne who work with the McKinney-Vento students and families that are getting close to homelessness and foster students. And those, the state doesn't fund those positions, but they should be funding those positions because it's actually saves the district or the state money in the long run, because if you can prevent students from going into homelessness and families from going into homelessness, you can save a lot of money for the state. So that's one category of support staff. The other one is social workers that are included in there. We're funding at least one social worker, and social workers should be allocated based on the income levels of the students, and it's all the same. And so that's another area. And then the final area that I'm pushing is what we call our community liaisons. And these are the folks, we have 4 of them that work with the various ethnic communities. They know the different languages, they know the cultures, and allow the families and students in those communities to more effectively communicate with our school district. So those are the ones that I'm pushing through this committee. We'll see how they get reported to OSBI and whether they take it on. But anyway, some of these, it's going to be this legislative session is going to be another tough one because the state is already in the red and the state financial system starting. So it's going to be tough to get some of these things, but these are things that you need to pursue them year after year after year, and then eventually some of them start to go through. And so the fact that at least 3 of them I know OSBI is going to recommend is so. Anyway, I'm working on that, and they will come out with their recommendation, I think September, at the end of August. And like I say, Dr. Pedrosa is on the big committee, so hopefully she can lobby for some of that, and we'll see how that works its way through the system. So that's been my summer work. Thanks.
Thank you. Director Proctor.
Excited to report that early on in our bonding conditions, we were interviewed by several local papers, and they circled back and are interested in doing a follow-up on how we made it through. And I tried to connect them to Director Berto, and I guess there was a little fault. So I spoke directly with the director, and I just emailed him as well. He wants you to contact him directly if they're excited about doing a follow-up on the health of TSD, so there's that. And following up on the few months ago, earlier this year, we were talking about a mentor program that wants to help with our schools, middle school and hopefully high school. So I was trying to follow up so I could meet and follow up with the principals, but I think they're still in the developmental stage or second tier of the developmental stage. So we may hear some more through the summer in order to get ready for either fall or after the winter break. So we're looking forward to see how that develops. So that's what we've been juggling so far, late spring and early summer. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Poppin.
Hi, everyone. It's summer. Hope everyone's enjoying the sun, if there is right now. But I was invited to attend the exit conference for the Office of State Auditor. CFO Amy Fleming invited me. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend, but reading based on the findings, I didn't see any. So, there weren't any critical areas of concern. The report for the audit was conducted from start September 1st of 2024 through August 31st, 2025. And then I believe that the next audit will be for the winter of 2026, 2027. So again, looks like, yeah, that's good news. I wasn't part of the meeting, but it seems like there was no reporting errors. And then the other thing is, this is preliminary, but I believe the Rotarians for CTAC and Sequoia, they are probably planning to do a back to school fair. So what this is essentially a group of volunteers who are CTAC and Tacoma residents, and they try to volunteer and raise money, or I guess supplies for students. So they sent me an invitation. I plan to attend, but yeah, it's just something on my mind. Other than that, I have nothing else to report. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. For my report, I have been still making progress with our 12th edition of Robert's Rules of Order. I am starting to join our city meetings, watching videos of other meetings in higher offices, and watching our state reps and with their meetings to expand my knowledge of Robert's Rules of Order. So our Robert's Rule of Order, our policy, and how things should be enforced. So I will be focusing my efforts on getting each of you a cheat sheet for those greater detailed rules before we get into our next school year. I've also been to several community events where a lot of people have been able to come up to me and kind of open up about concerns, their praises, and more concerning the district. I will take any complaint seriously, but if it is to be followed as per policy 5270P, it has to be written, it has to be an email, public comment, or submitted, like I said, in writing. If you see me out there, don't hesitate to come up to me and say hi. My face is very stern, but please come up and say hi. I promise. I'm a little bit of a wallflower, so you'll see me standing off to the side. Like I said, if there's anything that you would like me to come to or any events you feel like it would be beneficial for me to attend, I will be happy to be there and hopefully be able to accommodate based upon my current schedule. We are making progress towards our board goals. Our joint meeting with the city is locking down our final agenda so we can lock into a meeting or a meeting date. This will help us. Having that agenda set will help us focus a lot of our discussion items and goals like the safety concerns at CV and at the bottom of Remers Hill along McAdam and the 144th Bridge, where there are a lot of traffic issues. Our air and water quality in the schools is making progress. I still need to catch myself up with where we're currently at. We will be having another board retreat here shortly to solidify our expectations for the upcoming school year. The Verizon lease is still being worked on from their side, so we will not have something until they are ready. So it probably won't be happening in August. Hopefully we'll be able to get through the pack renovations today. And then our parks project is still on pause, but we are looking into that moving forward. Otherwise, that's it for me. So with that, getting into our consent agenda, do we have unanimous consent to move with the consent agenda, or does anything need to change?
So moved.
All right, seconded. It has been moved and seconded that we will approve the consent agenda. All those for discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, ayes have it. The consent agenda is approved. All right, getting into board discussion. Starting with our 2026 and 2027 budget. Amy? Welcome back.
Including CFO. So in front of you tonight, and what you've been able to see is what we are recommending for the budgets for our 5 funds for the 26-27 school year. So the document that is presented to you tonight is a summary of what is called the official F-195. That's the OSPI terminology for the budget document that must be submitted to them with the approval by the school board no later than August 31st. This document's 195 pages, and so what I do is I take that document and I summarize it into a much more concise document, because the entire F-195 is numbers, and that's all it is. There's no graphs, there's no other information provided other than a bunch of numbers on a lot of pages. So what you see before you on page 3 is the draft resolution. The resolution provides you the capacity, expenditure capacity for the 5 funds that I've mentioned. And then it also provides operating transfers from the transportation vehicle fund into the debt service to pay the bus loans that we have. And then also transfers from the capital projects fund to the general fund to support the instructional technology that is supposed to stay in the general fund. So as a part of the cleanup that I've been doing over the number of years that I've been here, I took the highest priority. And then I've been working my way through, and so this is kind of one of the last things that I've needed to fix for the district. And so that's why we're seeing a little bit of a change for the 26-27 school year, including some increased costs in instruction in the technology department. So that's what that is. On page 5 is the executive summary. So in this, what I did was we took into consideration all factors and planned for all contingencies. So when I mentioned here it's the worst case scenario, it's because all factors of the contingencies have been included into this budget document. We do that to provide the capacity that is needed in case something that we weren't anticipating comes up. We can plan for it accordingly, make those changes as necessary, and not have to come back to you for a budget extension, because doing that is a lot of work. And it also requires another public hearing and then passage of all of that information again. And so we try to avoid that to the extent necessary.
I have a question about I'm trying to figure out the advantages of doing a worst case budget as opposed to a realistic budget. Because, this worst case, so you end up with a fund balance of like 3%, which is, below what we're trying to get to 6%. But you're saying, well, we'll still try and get to that 6% over, the course of the year. Is there, I guess, why not just come out with a budget that has 6% as opposed to trying to do, is there some advantage to doing that? It's always been a bit of an issue for me because,
Right.
come to the, and last year, for example, we had the budget was 2%, I think, on balance. And that one kind of makes sense because we were recovering out of the binding conditions. But this year, I think your current forecast has been this year at 5. And so okay, we're really close. And so why not just why not just do a budget that has 6%?
So we want to take into consideration contingencies. So as you recall, in the 23-24 school year, we had all the flooding that took place.
Right.
It really took hit. So even though we had some insurance proceeds, we still paid out of pocket.
Yeah.
This budget also takes into consideration curriculum adoption, which we're not fully funded for by the state. And that's close to $800,000 by the time you buy the materials and do all of the training, the teacher training that has to take place. And so
there's certain factors that we put into play into these budgets, again, so I can build that capacity, so I don't have to come back to you in case we do have something come up, that is a surprise to us. You know, we don't want the surprises, but I think all districts, all CFOs in the districts that I've worked with and know will plan for and put into place contingencies for those unanticipated costs that might come through. And so that's part of what we do when we're planning these budgets.
So that's what you're saying, the advantage is to, you know, budget the lower fund balance, knowing that there's a lot of contingencies in there that you know, that probably won't happen, some of them may happen, but.
Right.
So that's what, and so the advantage to that is then you have a less chance of having to come back and modify the budget later in the year and go through that whole process.
And then obviously if those aha moments come up for us, we're communicating that with the school board as well, so that there are no surprises. So if something does happen, you know, you will also know immediately what's going on and the why behind it. So, yes.
Okay, and so we do have, in this budget, there is a funding for the curriculum adoption and all that's good. We know, I mean, that one we know is, I mean, we think it's gonna happen. I mean, it definitely won't happen, so, yeah, okay.
And then what we're going to have to do for future budgets is come through a cycle of curriculum adoptions, because these are very expensive.
Right.
And so it's almost like we have to plan for and do either every other year or every 2
Right.
years.
Right,
Because we certainly can't afford to do a curriculum adoption every single year. We just don't have that capacity or that funding to do so. So we'll have to plan for future curriculum adoptions as well. In this process.
yeah, I know we've had that, I think, we've had that in the past. I mean, we need a cycle,
Yeah,
and the other thing is, we can't do a lot of curriculum adoptions in a year just because the staff doesn't have the capacity to absorb, you know, getting a new alternate curriculum every year. So anyway, yeah. I guess the one other comment I did, hopefully you can produce another vision.
Yes.
This is the document that has all these gaps that I always talk to the state about in special ed and MSOC, transportation and substitute teachers. And so if we can, it would be really.
Yeah, we'll
helpful.
definitely work on that. It's just the timing of
Yeah,
having
yeah,
that
that's fine,
information
that's fine.
was,
Yeah.
it was just
That's good.
not possible, so.
Yeah.
So in our general fund, if we jump to page 7, so this is just the summary page of all of the budgets at a very, very high level for all of our funds. I just noticed that I did not update the last column, which is supposed to say 2026, 2027. So I apologize for that. I'll fix that for the final adoption when this is given again on August 11th. But that very right-hand column represents the high-level summary of the budgets for each of our funds. Then as you move through this document, it talks, we get into more details. So I want to point out that we did, the board looked at their priorities in February and gave me the updated priorities as we were establishing the 26-27 budget, which is noted on page 9. And then we utilized on page 11, the Budget Advisory Committee recommendations from the 24-25 school year. Unfortunately, with the cumulative, the migration of student and financial systems, there was just no capacity to run that and do that migration and hold a budget advisory committee forums. And so we thought the recommendations were really thought out in that 24-25 school year. So we utilized that as we were developing the budget for the 26-27 school year. On page 12, we looked at the student enrollment, and as I've been talking all year, we have talked about how we need to be conservative in our assumptions. And we know that the whole Puget Sound region is losing enrollment. And so for the 26-27 school year, I am budgeting, 2,423 with 95.37, funding start students, which just gets us up to 2518, full-time equivalent. Now, remember, the district doesn't, or the state doesn't fund us on headcount, they fund us based on annual average FTE. So, just because we have more students and seats, especially at the middle and high school, we are not funded in that capacity. And so our budgets are somewhat limited when we're creating them because we have to account for that average annual FTE and not headcount, which is really unfortunate because that kind of starts in this whole process of the underfunding model that we are in with the state of Washington. For future years, as I've been also speaking, we just anticipate that enrollment will continue to decline. I do know that there are a couple of apartment complexes that might be planned. One of them is more for the senior housing, but there's another one that we believe is for families. And so we are maybe anticipating a small bump in the 29-30 school year as a result of that if those apartment complexes do come through. But we will have to monitor and just watch enrollment on these out years to see what it's looking like for the typical schools.
So I'm curious, under the chart, FTE versus plan, it's only filled in the 22-23.
I'm sorry, what page are we on?
Page 12. The FTE enrollment by grade and then the next.
Oh, yeah, let me fix that as well.
Okay.
I apologize.
Okay.
I don't know what I can use zeros.
Yeah.
A lot
Okay,
of numbers.
We're gonna disappear.
yes, yes, they are. No,
Okay,
I'll do
okay.
that.
I thought maybe you knew something we didn't.
No. So, okay. That's the beauty of the introduction and then the final,
Right. Yep.
Page 13 is just the chart of the previous, page. And so you just see the graph chart of what enrollment has been looking like, over time. Obviously, if you go back even further, enrollment was starting to decline. It was kind of steadily declining, kind of plateaued out. Then we had COVID, and then we had this huge drop. And then in the kind of the 23-24 is when we saw the asylum seekers. So we saw a large increase in enrollment, and now it's starting to dip back down. And so it's the graphical component of looking over, many years. We're kind of more in line with the 16-17 school year at this point, where we were starting to see some of those enrollment declines. It looks like we're kind of going back to that cycle, which you don't see on this chart.
Yeah, there's a pretty tight correlation between, the first Trump came in where immigration was basically shut down, and then Biden came in, but then it started to go back up, but then COVID was there, so that restricted it.
Right.
And then now Trump is back in and immigration is back down.
Right
So,
back
yeah.
These next several pages are, so this is something that I introduced to you all in the February board work session, talking about how we're funded by the state. And so it starts with the base enrollment, student education. And it doesn't take into consideration any other factors. It just says, this is our model, this is how, this is the starting point. So for every 400 students in the K-6 grade level, you get a 1.0 teacher. And it just goes through and runs through all of these calculations. And so what it does is it takes the model for our planned student enrollment of 2,518 students, runs through this model to come up with our funding factors that you see on the following pages. It provides the staffing FTE, and then what it does is it takes that and multiplies it by the allocation value and the inflationary factor for that total allocation to give us the total dollar amount that they're giving us for funding purposes.
Actually, I think the inflationary, it's not an inflationary factor, it's regionalization.
Yeah, it's more.
Regionalization is not really, it's a kind of cost of living factor, if you will,
Right.
so, which is different from inflationary factor.
Right.
So I think this title should really just be regionalization, because that's what you said it is, so.
And so then what it does is, and so a lot of the districts in the Puget Sound area have this 1.18. But there are districts that don't, so Auburn School District's only at 1.12, 5 school districts also at 1.12. So it's weird how they determine what the regionalization factor is for districts, because living and being in Auburn is no different than being in Tukwila School District. So how they came up with their methodology is a little bit odd as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was based on the cost of living,
Mhm.
and there's a lot, yeah, I won't go into, there's a whole bad discussion about that, but anyway.
So basically what this does then is it breaks down the funding model for anything in program 01, which is basic education, or program 97, which is the support services. So the support services are the superintendent's office, the business office, human resources, technology, custodial maintenance, I'm probably missing a department, communications. And so it comes up with those funding formulas to support those two big sections. Basic education is all of our teaching staff, our principals, and the support staff that, like in the front office at the schools, the paraeducators, things of that nature, that is a component of the basic education 01 model. So what I did was, on page 15, it breaks down based on our enrollment factors, what the prototypical FTE, staffing FTE is for each of the sections for both certificated and then classified staff. And so what you see here is the funding model plus how we've allocated by the district, which is the blue bar, and then the total number of FTE, staff FTE, regardless of the funding source. So this includes all of our grants. So Title I, special education, all of the grants that are not a part of Program 1 or Program 97. And so you have this broken out in both certificated and classified staff. And then on page 17, it gives you the salary comparisons. And so this is just yet another area where you see that the state is not fully funding any of the components or the categories of our staffing model. Because if you go back to page 14, they allocate for a teacher, $97,000, and many of our teachers make more than that with our benefits included. So it's automatically right away, you're seeing just the fact that we're underfunded in all of the categories for school districts based on that prototypical model. So not only are we underfunded in the number of FTE, but we're also underfunded in the salary allocation mix that they provide to us.
So I think, David, if you please agree this is fair, basically every district is paying more
Yes.
than the state allocates, and the reason that we have to do that in particular is we have to take competitive.
Right.
So if we were back down at the level the state was funding, we would be totally not competitive. And so everybody, kind of everybody has to do that, and we get caught up in that. And where do we get that funding from? Well, it comes out of our local levy dollar. And that's where we start using, basic. So we're doing it with teachers, we're doing it with administrators, and, so just so people understand that's what's going on.
Right. So these next several pages, unless you all have like specific questions, I wasn't going to go into detail. So these are requirements of how we must report to the state. So the general fund revenue, the revenue by activities, these are specific codes that are provided to us by the state of Washington, and that's how we must report. It's how we prepare our budget, and it's how we have to do our financial accounting. So that's why you see all of these pages with all of these numbers. I will point out on page 19, the state general purpose is where our apportionment lives. That's our apportionment money, the 01 to 97 that I was referring to in the state prototypical model. This used to be at 51%. And over time, you can see that this is eroding, because the state continues to, not fully fund school districts in this category.
It was 51% what year?
Probably it started in 1920, and then it's slowly been eroding. It was eroding before that. There was a huge lawsuit. It was called the McCleary lawsuit. It went on for several years. The state fixed the funding formula, bumped it up to 51%, and then it's slowly been going down since. So I think it's important because it shows our reliance on local taxes, to fund school districts. And we are not alone. All districts in the state of Washington are facing, this particular issue.
So I'd ask a question on page, they're now page 20. So it's interesting, the federal revenues, you're projecting to go up a lot.
Yeah, so
Why
for that, apologies, I thought I explained that, but what I did was I put, last year I had the capacity, some of the revenue capacity sitting in state revenue. And a lot of it, some of it has to do with safety net funding as well.
Okay, so you're just shifting the
I shifted
categories.
it around,
Yeah.
I shifted categories.
Okay. Okay, so it's not new money.
No, it's not,
Okay.
it's not new money,
Okay.
unfortunately.
The other one is the private foundation.
So
What
the
is
private
that?
foundation is, so we received a sizable grant this year
Or summer school.
for summer school.
Okay, that one.
And so we're anticipating that we're going to receive it again next year. And so I went ahead and budgeted for it.
Nice.
The expenditures are all extra time because it's summer school. And so if something does happen, we can pull the budget pretty easily. So, yeah.
George, walking into
For 26, 27, this is for page 7. For the budgeted, proposed 26, 27 year, does the capital fund, for instance, have the anticipation of, for instance, if we approve like a PAC renovation, is that anticipated?
Yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
it is.
The other one on page 20, you have a revenue of long-term financing, 150,000.
Yeah, so this was part of the accounting changes that I had to make last year. It has to do with the accounting for long-term leases and subscription-based technology.
Okay, so this is a shuffling.
It's an accounting thing.
Okay.
It's,
Okay.
yeah.
Anytime I see large increases in revenue, this sounds good, right?
Yeah, it's how
Okay.
we account for multi-year technology and if we have any long-term leases and how we have to account for that. So if we have anything new that we purchase that's more than 1 year, you have to classify it in a certain way. And this is part of that component that takes place.
Okay.
I know it's pretty confusing.
So 20, you're just kind of going through the rest of these,
Mhm.
like 22.
So 22 to 26, 27 budget, 4,100 is some of the capacity
Yeah, yeah.
purposes that I put in there.
Yeah, I see that one. The question I have is, just wanted to verify the state eliminated the language access
Yes.
coordinator, right?
Yes.
So that's something I always like to include when I'm talking about it. The other one, so outdoor education. So last year we were funding that through the grant that came from I think the principals group or something. So are we saying we're zeroing that out this year?
Yeah, so so the state funding didn't come through for that. And so even though it was through the AWSP, which is the Association of School Principals, it was actually funded by the state of Washington through them. Funding was eliminated. And so they are working on some GoFundMe. The Association of Washington School Principals are working on some GoFundMe, but we don't think that we'll be able to do outdoor education for the next school year, but the following school year. So we're working on some day field trips to some, like the Museum of Flight or some other things to give some fifth grade experiences.
So I'm going to throw this out as an idea in order to fund that. So we're putting in solar panels and we're gonna have some significant savings in utilities, which I mean, we'll have to, my rough calculations based on what you were saying about what percentage of it is, that could be a couple $100,000. So I'd like to consider, funding the outdoor education out of that, part of those savings. Just throw that out there for consideration, because that's a program I hate to see.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know when we're going to start achieving those savings, and so that is something that you'd have to take into
Well,
consideration.
They're
So,
installing them
yeah, I know.
now. So,
Which is good, which is good.
yeah, and I'm happy the work at Tugwell Elementary seems to be going fast, both on the fence and the panels are moving along nicely, so hopefully they'll be in place before the school year.
Yes. Page 23 and 24 is just showing how we spend our property tax revenue that we receive, so it's the enrichment funding. There was a change in not, this last year, the year before's legislative session that provided school districts the ability to pretty much fully collect on their levies. Which benefited the Tukwila School District. And so in calendar year 27, which starts in January, we will be able to collect the full $10.2 million that was approved by the voters, which is shown on page 23. And so what we have to do is, because King County does property tax assessments based on calendar year, we have to translate that over into the fiscal year. And so that's why you see the fall of 26 and then the spring of 27 and what those property tax revenues are anticipated to be for our school district. Page 24 is just the breakdown of what the state determines is local excess or enrichment revenue levies, and then how we spend our money in those categories. This is important for us to have in this document because the auditors also look at this to make sure that we're lining up with how we say we're going to spend our money. It was a new requirement that was put into place, so the auditors actually look at this to see how we're spending our money.
So my question on this page has to do with the preschool. So I understand, what we get funded for ECAP comes from the state, but it comes through the ESD.
Mm-hmm.
And so it sounds to me like the fact that we're having to spend more money than we're getting allocation. I know the ESD takes a cut off the top for their administrating. So I guess my question is, have we kind of pressed the ESD? I mean, if we're not getting funded for what it costs us, why not, and why are they trimming off this?
Right, so we continue to work with the ESD. Again, this is the worst case scenario budget.
Yeah.
And so what the ESD has done in the past is provided additional funding through the year as funding becomes available to them. So there's no guarantee. So when I budget the worst case scenario.
Yeah,
this is another one of those worst
okay.
case scenarios. But they'll sometimes do amendments with us to say, hey, we're going to fund the specific thing that you're already doing. And so they'll sometimes give us extra money for that.
As long as
to
we're
make
pressing them,
closer to
yeah,
closing that
that's
gap.
As long as we're pressing them and they're aware of it.
Yes.
Because we should be getting what it costs us to do it, not.
Right.
Yeah,
We
okay,
continue to work with them.
okay,
So now we're moving over to the general fund, which is the expenditure side, which is the more important component. Again, the numbers on this page represent how we must report back to the state. If you look at the object categories, I want to point out that the debit and credit transfers, those are the internal, what we call internal revenue and expenditures. So a good example of that is our transportation field trips. Transportation will initially bear the cost, and then we transfer the cost of what that field trip is back to the department or the area. So, for example, athletics football team goes on I wouldn't say a field trip, but they take the bus to their game. Those charges go back to the athletic department because that's where those costs really reside. And so that's what a debit and credit transfer is in this scenarios, just so you're aware. On page 27, it just shows you the breakdown, and the pie chart of how we spend our funding, by program. So compensatory education, is a grant. Voc Ed is state funding specifically to support vocational education in both the high school and middle school. Special education, our regular and basic education, which is our O1 program, and then our support services, which is our program 97, our food services program, and our transportation department are all residing in the support services area. And if you have questions on here, please feel free to interrupt me. Page 29 is just the breakdown. This is, again, just another look. It's by activity. Again, the state is very specific on how we must report. So not only do we report by the program, we also would have to report by the activity. So is it a teaching activity? Is it a support? Is it the business office? Is it human resources? And so we have very, very specific account codes that we have to follow, as mandated by the state of Washington School Accounting Manual. Page 31 is the breakdown. It shows you the graphical of by objects, so salaries, benefits, materials, purchase services, which is a lot of our contracts, our utilities, our insurance, and things of that nature. Page 32 is another requirement by state law. We are required to show you our materials, supplies, and operating costs, which is short for MSOC. In programs 01 and 97, which is the basic education and support services on how we're funded. So we've been given a total of $3,847,000 if I round up. And what you can see then is the detailed breakdown for supplies, contractual services, and travel. Contractual services consists in program 97 of our utilities, our insurance, and I would have to say, obviously the curriculum adoption is sitting in program 01. So that is all embedded in here. In program 97, object 7, $3.6 million of that cost is utilities, insurance, audit, financial system fees, and building and maintenance costs, and all of these are unavoidable. Unless we can get solar panels on all of them. But there's still costs involved. And the utilities include the garbage, the water, the sewer, you know, the utilities that everybody pays in their home. And so these costs are unavoidable.
And I think you mentioned somewhere like insurance, 40% just in one
Yeah.
year. It's like 600,000 to $1 million or something like that.
Yeah, it jumped from 985 to $1.38 million for next year. We haven't really given the cost of what that's going to be. So yeah, it's a 40-something% increase for us, unfortunately.
And the state is giving us like 2%.
Yes, yes, it's horrible. Page 33 just shows you the fund balance history over time. Want to point out that the district as a whole, I think everybody included, really contributed to getting us out of binding conditions. There was a lot of things that were kind of given up during that timeline to get us financially stable. And I think every single person in this district took part of that in one way or another. And so as we ended the year with a negative fund balance, you can see that we've really turned it around. And we continue to working on improving our ending fund balance so we're in compliance with the policy 6022. The remaining pages are remaining funds, the capital projects funds. Again, the capacity has been built in there. On page 35, it shows you kind of the listing of projects. Included in that is the Performing Arts Center. We have technology, we have an adoption program for laptops that was kind of developed when we were doing the technology levy, and we've been following that, pretty much to the T. It's been working well. And then obviously, just the facilities improvements and some of the things that we're working on. The solar project, I included some costs in case there's costs going into the next fiscal year, because sometimes it takes a while to close out the projects. And so not all the costs will probably done by August 31st. And so it just includes some of that revenue and expenditures that we'll be receiving here over the next several months as we finish the solar projects.
I guess the one, comment, so kind of evident by its missing is, Cascade View in terms of, because we're planning to, replace, rebuild in 28, but, there are, I think there are some, hopefully there are some indoor, I mean, we did a study on the indoor air quality, in terms of the circulation of air. And then I still think we need to take a look at the, the fine particles, the PM2.5 stuff. And there are air purifiers available that other districts have gotten either from King County or so forth and so on. And so some of that, I hope we're still kind of looking at that and either, getting some free stuff or some grant stuff or something to, improve, make some improvements to the indoor air quality to the extent that it makes sense to do that.
Yeah, so we are continually pursuing grants and applying for grants. And then it's also built into, even though it's not thought out specifically, it's built into the district-wide infrastructure. We have some capacity in that component as well. So that if we can
Okay.
find, so it's not off our radar.
Yeah. Okay.
Specifically or directly. So it's always there, and we're always applying for new grants.
Okay.
The debt service is probably the easiest budget to prepare, because it is based on the debt service schedules that have been included, at the bottom of page 36 and 37. So this just shows you, what we have to pay in the 26-27 school year, and then kind of what's remaining for our debt. And this is nice because it includes our refunding of the 2016 bond, that is noted here on page 37. So that is some good news. And then the Associated Student Body Fund is developed by the student body at Foster High School. And then what I do is I look at it and I'll add some other components like the InvestEd, some of the things that maybe are going on at Showalter and things of that nature. So I'll add some extra capacity in here as well. Again, this is the wish list of all the things that they might want to do, and their plans for the upcoming school year. Sometimes it happens and sometimes, they're dreaming big, but then sometimes it just doesn't come through. So, but it gives them the capacity to spend and do some of the things that they were planning to do.
So I'm happy to see that there is a spend down of the fund balance because the $300 seemed too high to me. And so that's good that they have some ideas for how to do that, which is good.
Right. And then the last fund is the Transportation Vehicle Fund. Again, this is probably the second easiest fund to plan for. You see some bump ups in both the revenue and expenditure. This has to do with the EV components going on at the transportation site. So they're putting in, and we're going to purchase 2 EV buses. And so the revenues and expenditures tie for the purchase of those 2 EV buses. We have grant funding to purchase those buses. So there's no loans that we'll have to take to get them.
Do you think the operational costs will be less because of?
Yes, the operational costs will be less because we're only operating 2 buses. And then we've looked at the infrastructure so that we can expand out, eventually expand out, once things stabilize.
Right.
So, the last page then is also required is the 4-year budget assumption. In the out years. little bit hard to predict. So basically I took, looking at some inflationary factors, looked at revenues and think, oh, that's about a 1% increase over time. And then looked at expenditures, made some cuts in the 27-28 school year to, work towards that 6% ending fund balance. But then in the very out year, we see some small increases, over time. So, a lot changes even within one fiscal year. So it's hard to predict, especially out in that fourth year what that budget would look like.
So the other thing I just wanted to add, so, we're considering trying to do a bond in 28, and so the bond agencies, in terms of what kind of interest rates they may give us, look a lot at our financial condition, and so and I was looking up our financial indicators on the state auditor's website and OSBI, and, we're out of the warning area, but we're still in the not strong, and it's all because of the fund balance. It all comes back to the fund balance. So it will behoove us to kind of keep moving on the fund balance, because that then strengthens our position. So if in 28 we do go after bonds, then we'll get a better interest rate, which will cost the taxpayers less money and so forth. So,
Right.
So that's another reason. I think it's not a huge amount just because all school bonds are backed by the state, but it is something. And so continuing to work on increasing the fund balance is important to do for that reason.
Yeah, and unfortunately, Moody's, who is the rating agency for the state of Washington, has the state of Washington on watch for school
Yeah,
districts.
that's true.
Because
Yeah.
everybody needs fund balances in a
Right.
dive, and a lot more districts are going into binding conditions.
Right.
So they've automatically put school districts just on that watch list. So it's gonna be really difficult. And they were really impressed with how much we grew when we did the bond refunding, but they didn't really move us on the bond rating. And it's because of the state of Washington, because where we are as districts in its entirety, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be really hard. So we'll see what happens.
Yep.
So something like the CTE program, where would that fall?
Pardon?
Something like the CTE program, where would that fall? Vocational or that like?
Yeah, so there's a specific, on the program side, the vocational sits on page 25. There's a separate section, it's program 30. Is the vocational education instruction, in there.
That is where CTE falls.
That's where CTE falls, all the CTE is in there, including the Running Start component for vocational Running Start.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah.
On page 30, which shows the general fund expenditures by activity, you're able to reallocate based on activity, right, in a given year, or when you submit this budget, for instance, I'm looking at like the board of directors activity. If 136K isn't expensed, you're allowed to reallocate those to other activities, right?
Correct. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And just so you know, the board of directors, people look at that, and I think most of that is legal costs.
Most of it is the auditor costs,
And
and then the 25-26 budget, it was a little bit higher because of election costs, because we're required to
Makes sense.
pay for all of the election costs.
Okay,
So it's not like we're spending a lot of money on board, right?
Well,
It's just
no, it's
other
not.
things.
I was like, 130,
Good call.
I'm pretty sure there's probably some cost savings or something like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense then.
Yeah, so it's usually, every couple of years, we have to bump it up because of the election costs, and then the state auditor's office auditing us, we're required to pay them, it comes out of the board director's budget,
Great.
so that's why it's.
Everybody,
high.
what else?
And again, that's another one of those unfunded mandates, because we don't get funding for it, but we have to pay for the cost, so.
And I think that's also where our legal, the state,
And some of the
district-wide
big-
legal costs
some-
are taken
some-
there as well, so,
But, yeah.
yeah. Just so people know.
Yeah.
But yes, good question, nice to point that out, so.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Okay, moving into our second board discussion item, policy number 4,000, public information program for review. I'm gonna kind of drag my feet just a little bit, just so we get probably some time to get back in. Why is it open? Yes, I don't think you're ready. Sorry, my computer's really weird.
I guess my only comment on this one looks fine. It sounds to me a lot of, and it's in the last, it's kind of reflected in the last two paragraphs there, that this is describing something that is primarily about reviewing our strategic plan and saying what we're doing about the strategic plan. I mean, it doesn't say those specific words, but I hope that, administrative recommendations for improvement in student learning and district operations, hopefully that's included in our strategic plan.
Correct. Naomi Virgo, she, her, pronouns, and Director of Communications, Equity and Engagement. Yes, that would definitely be correct. So, it's a reflection of just our efforts throughout the year and the outcomes that we're able to observe.
So hopefully this isn't totally like some drafted report that needs to be generated out of thin air. It's something that we're basically doing.
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's reflected in the updates,
Yeah,
to the policy. Just really wanting to kind of, a collection of all the reports that were presented throughout the year.
Okay.
And, kind of to book in.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Nope. All righty. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you.
All right, getting into policy number 1005, key functions of the board for additional review and discussion. So I know we wanted to talk about this last time. Was there anything that we wanted to add or shift in here for our final review before we all good?
So I'm still of the position, I like the old one, so I just should keep the old one.
Proctor, anything to add?
No,
Director Proctor, my apologies. Director Proctor, anything to add?
No. Nothing to add.
Okay, so we will get to that when we are talking about. Well, actually, we can have on here. So, for adding this to a next agenda for final approval as an action item, what is our general consensus here? We want to take it back to the old, or do we want to honor Deb's work and get it as written? Seems like moving back to the old is what we'll be motioning.
That's what I would do. I mean, this new one is Waz's, suggestions.
So do we need a motion for this, or we just shift it to the next action item?
Just shift it to the next meeting.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, that will conclude that discussion. Moving into policies number 1733 and 1810 for review. Anything change, add, discussion? Like it how it is, add it to the next meeting? All right, sounds good. Getting into our PAC updates. For Foster High School, living on. Thank you. Thank you.
So my only question is Mr. Baldock good with this?
Approve that.
Is Mr. Baldock good with this?
Mr. Walker was initially and continuously take all the information from him to recommend all this.
So he's good with this as it says?
That was his primary scope of what things we needed to do in the in the.
Yeah, because I think it was worth, to kind of go back to the develop in the group to get their, what was kind of the first time through, you got some input from them, but then you didn't kind of cycle back to them, because when I started asking them questions about the original proposal as a setup, they didn't really understand the details of it. But now this version, I think it, like the sound system is laid out much better, and so it looks, I just think it's, when we're doing these projects, it's important to go and cycle back to the user group and say, okay, did we capture your ideas, and is it good to go? And so
Right.
in this case, it sounds like it is now, so.
We did have the meetings on, the May 26th meeting, we had the meetings on May 30th meeting, where we took information from, board members, the student representative, we also had the board members had the opportunity to go through, so we took all the information from there to try to present this.
And I understand we're, at this point, and later in the meeting, we're going to approve essentially the primary scope here. And
Yeah.
then a year from now, we'll come back and review phase 2 or the secondary portion of this.
Yeah, well, let's have that conversation a little bit, because the primary scope is gonna be funded by $1. And those $1 come from capital projects, and we have a $2.4 million for them. Now, the secondary part, we did mention that we could have done through the levy back. We already have a budget for the following year, which is 2020, for the summer of 2027, which was presented to, the proposed project was presented to you on the May 2026 budget. And I believe that most of those projects have been approved by Indian CFO. So what we have in mind for the levy projects comes up to $2.2 million. And I don't know if all those funds will be provided to us to complete the projects for levy. Now, which are projects that are right now that we need to do, like for example, the generator for the CAC, things that are specific that we need for the schools, envelopes, repairs and such. So depending on where we can find that $8,803, we depend on where we can find more funds for those. We can also wait for the bond, 2028 bond, and then capture all the activities that we need to do and put it right in there. So 2028 is not that far away. So when we're preparing for our bond, we can include all those items that we wanted to do.
Yeah, and I hope also in the interim, we'll be keeping our eye out for potential grants that could be portion of it as well. And I think at that time, probably should take a look at these ones that you have under additional costs. So those are not included in the primary scope at this point, and won't be included in the primary scope. But things like the headsets and wireless, I mean, I think what we have up there now is good for what we need now, but hopefully if the drama group grows like crazy and they double the number of people. So I just think, in a year from now, when we're reviewing for the secondary phase, we can come back and take a look at those and see if any of those make sense.
And I have been having conversations with the architect too as well, because there's a lot of items that we have not included. So I have been asking to be having a record of all the items that we want to do. So we don't miss that, because we have not put it in here.
Yeah, so we come back in a year from now and kind of review all that and see where we are in the bonds and all that. So,
Yeah.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's two, I mean, I was one of the directors in attendance for the tour. My questions got asked, and I think it makes sense to proceed with phase 1 and then see how it goes in phase 2.
And in the questions answer form, those considerations and questions were taken into place when they finished this final memo. Any additional discussion? Okay.
As long as it gets done before Arden graduates.
Thank you.
Perfect. And just to speed things along, we now are in the questions only, so remember, we need to give them time to prepare. Starting with our resolution number 974, adoption of 26-27 budget. Are we discussing further, or do you feel like we've?
I think we've gone through that in great detail.
Oh, yeah. Just want to make sure before I move on.
Yeah.
All right, monthly financial report for June 2026. Anything that we felt that wasn't answered that we need to add to the next meeting? 26 or 25-26 financial forecast, anything that we need to motion for the next meeting? All right, and then lastly, review of the cell phone policy procedure and survey data.
So that one I do have a couple of questions on.
Okay, you already did this.
First of all, it was interesting, the survey went out, so we're using what, Thought Exchange, is that what we're calling it? The new survey, yeah, Thought Exchange, the new survey tool. It was interesting to me that 90% of it were English students. I mean, one of the reasons we bought that tool was we could get to the multilingual students. And so I'm kind of curious, did we not, is there some reason we didn't get any or got minimal input from the multilingual non-English students?
Good evening, Lieutenant Parker, Principal at Foster High School. The survey was administered in advisory classes. So that could attribute to some of it. This was our one of our first data points as it relates to this particular survey related to cell phones. So I'm not really sure. It'd be interesting to see when we administer the survey again. We'll have to be more intentional about getting that group to.
Yeah, I'm just curious how that would work, because that was one of the things that was sold, basically getting the tool is that we could do it easily in multiple languages. And so the second point was, so this whole thing about cell phones, I mean, there's the government now coming out about, banning cell phones, and those guys coming out banning cell phones, and everybody wants them, put away for the entire day. We've done it, away for the day for the elementary and middle school, but high school we have, you can do it during and so forth and so on. And so, I was on some calls about this issue that people are, getting excited about away for the entire day. And there's kind of an alternative. It becomes a little more nuanced at high school, I think, because the question becomes, where do students learn how to use cell phones properly if they're not using it? And the answer, I asked somebody and they said, well, their friends will teach them, which will happen for sure. I mean, that happens no matter what, but that's a little bit risky. It seems like, and I asked some questions in here, and we're talking about, using advisory to educate the students on the cell phone policy, and that's one thing. So you can't use it, be taking, inappropriate pictures and, all that kind of stuff. But whereas another step is, where do students learn kind of how the positive part of using cell phones, like, there's a lot of things you can use on them. You can monitor your health, you can do GPS tracking. I mean, there's all kinds of things, and I'm just curious what the thinking is about how do we, the idea of just totally exempting them from schools. Like I say, in elementary, middle school, that's fine, but high school, it's a little more nuanced. And I'm curious what your thinking is on that.
Sure. Well, when we initially at Foster piloted the no cell phone policy back in 25-26, there was a lot of discussion around it. I will say that we've had several teachers who allow for cell phones during their lessons, right?
Yeah.
So for example, in our health classrooms, in our science classrooms, where they are having scholars model how to appropriately use cell phone for research purposes and so forth.
Yeah.
Taking pictures or what have you. So there is certainly, space in the classroom when appropriate. I think right now we're at a point where, cell phones have attributed, previously to a lot of cyberbullying, inappropriate conversations, truancy, all those things.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to continue to uphold like where we're at with the no cell phone use, but then slowly, as they learn during advisory lessons, during post-secondary informational sessions and so forth, allow space for, them to slowly be integrated into like the learning experiences. So there is a place for it. But I think, we still have a ways to go.
Yeah, the discussion with the state legislature is going to be interesting this year, and I think I'm inclined to want to, just total banning it at high school and not give people the discretion, put it in your hands to find out. It makes a lot more sense to me, because I was looking at, like, what's the cell phone policy at Highline College? Well, it's completely dependent on the professor, how they use it, and so, which makes a lot more sense to me, but anyway, that's good.
I think in the policy, I like the fact that it references that with the teacher's permissions, the scholars are able to
Yeah.
use for instructional and educational use. So
Yeah.
that was the question I had too, but reading through the material, it seemed like it's not like a total ban, it's really just a matter of it's what's the use case scenario. And then, one other thing which I think was interesting reading it was I guess if the student does use it and it's not for the, if it's not for instructional educational use, only the principals and the vice principals are allowed to confiscate the phone. Actually, it's not just like a teacher can't do in the classroom. So that's I guess have there been any instances where teachers have in the past like I assume not, but
Confiscated the phone?
yeah.
No, we haven't had situations where our teachers confiscate the phones, and that's primarily due to the implementation of the no cell phone policy. In the beginning of the year, we had a training, with our teachers around what that could look like. And so all of our cell phone rules, if you will, are a tiered approach.
Great.
And so we don't confiscate phones. If there are scholars who are checking their phones in, it's in collaboration and partnership with the family.
Perfect. Yeah.
So it sounds like our current policy makes sense to you, and in terms of that, now you've had to implement it for 1 year.
It makes sense. I think the challenges, as you've read, are, having our teachers uphold the expectations consistently, and just continuing the family partnership. It has been helpful to have the board adopt the policy, because that's what families were asking. Well, is it a board policy? And I know that we, actually we're one of the first ones around, in the area to do so. So it has been helpful. One of the things that I think about is right now we use cell phone pouches in the classroom, and it would be awesome to see some other support with funding to, I know that there are the Yonder pouches available, or just something, because, we still do encounter issues, right, where scholars are leaving to the restrooms with their phones and so forth. So still a lot of work to be done, but we have seen an improvement and a decrease, of course, like in our discipline data, specifically as it relates to bullying and all those things.
But just let us know if you need something else.
So I'm over here in my Trebek, I'm trying to form my comments in a formal question. But let me just narrow it to this. Jeff, has the approach been effective? Would you say it's been working?
I would say that the approach, yes, has been working. I am looking forward to it working better and improving every year, with it being implemented with fidelity and consistency across the board. And so that would be my ask, if there is, an additional device or something that we can use other than the pouches that we can invest in. I think that we'll continue to see.
Should let you go before the budget.
Yeah.
I do know that, and I'd love to hear more about what the challenges are, not in great detail, but in summary. But I know if some teachers allow it, that creates problems for other teachers. And so I guess can only imagine. And I kind of differ Because actually, high school is probably the worst place. Middle school, high school is probably the worst place for the whole cell phone drama. So I can only imagine. And then are there any questions about staff or the students seeing staff with their cell phones? And then and I can just, from being an administrator, I can just hear it now.
Absolutely, but that's also something that we discuss with our staff, right? Is being that example for our scholars, and so not using your cell phone in the classroom,
Right.
and so forth. So following the expectations as
Modeling it, yeah.
yeah, a staff as well.
Yeah, I can imagine that's challenging. And
Yes.
even the parents like, is that the boy, lady, you can't even get him off the phone at home. No, we're trying to help you. Right? So I better do the, we gonna support you.
Yeah,
We're gonna
so
support you.
I appreciate that. Just across the board, I think the support can continue to be, helping us to enforce it with messaging as a school district, across the district, and as we're communicating with families. I think one of the primary questions that comes up is, oh, how do I reach my student? And we want to assure them, right, that they're safe and so that they can continue to contact the office. But we don't want to disrupt learning, so.
Yeah, that's always bad. And I do would like to encourage and challenge that if we're directing them to the office, that a human answer the phone.
Yes.
There's nothing worse than I'm trying to reach my kid and I get the voicemail. That's unnerving.
Absolutely.
But I also don't acquiesce. It's an emergency at home. I know your kid, he can't help you with that emergency, But we can inform. So you're in a juxtaposition, but I think as we're developing, evolving, and make some adjustments and pivots and best practice, and I'm of the ilk that they actually come to school knowing how to work the cell phone. They're like, I don't know, we need to spend a whole lot of time teaching them how to. They show me how to do it. So,
Right.
Particularly for a district, you're avant-garde, so please don't get discouraged and document the data points. We may be selling this information to other districts and pay for new vouchers. That block signal, so it's not ringing while it's hanging up on the thing, I like to do it to council, so I encourage you and I acknowledge that creates some challenges that we're full aware of and keep rolling. If we can help as much as we can, as Amy allows us to support physically, but it is what it is. For keep, you're doing a great job.
Have any thoughts, Arden? You want to chime in on cell phones or not?
I'm not really the type of student who's on their phone the entire class, so I personally don't have a ton to say about it, but if I needed to talk more about it, I could ask people, but. Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine. You can always bring anything back again.
Mhm.
Or bring it to the principal.
All right, well, thank you so much for answering these additional discussion points.
Thank you.
Moving into our action items. Okay. For approval of human resources staffing report, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second,
It's been moved and seconded for the approval of the human resources staffing report. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Approval of the human resources staffing report has been passed. Moving into our approval of the superintendent contract, is there a motion?
so moved.
Second.
It has been motioned and seconded that we will approve the superintendent contract. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Approval of the superintendent contract has been approved, or has gone through. Approval of the 26-27 principal and assistant principal collective bargaining agreement and salary schedule.
So
Is there a
moved.
motion? No, motion.
So moved.
Seconded.
All right, it's been motioned and seconded for the approval of the 26-27 principal and assistant principal collective bargaining agreement and salary. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Approval of the 26-27 principal and assistant principal collective bargaining agreement and salary schedule, that's passed. Approval of the 26-27 central administrative salary schedule. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. All right, it's been motioned and seconded.
Discussion.
Oh, sorry,
Quick
discussion.
Director Amy, these are reflected in the budget we looked at, yes or no? I just want to get it on the record.
Yeah,
Amy Fleming, CFO, yes, they are reflected in the budget.
I just want that recorded in the ethos.
Okay,
Ready for
it has been motioned and seconded. Was there discussion? Yes, there was. Any further discussion?
well, I just add, I appreciate these last, actually, several of them. There's some increases to the salaries, and it's, you know, we just went through a binding conditions, and all these folks, these administrators took some hits during that time of IPDs and furloughs. So I just want to appreciate everybody, and I think Amy, our CFO, said that before, that, you know, it took a lot of people putting in some sacrifice to get us through it, and now we're kind of trying to set things back right a little bit too. We're still not totally competitive, but we're getting there. So anyway, thanks to all the people that.
The only thing I'll add is, you know, also, you know, it would, even when you're looking at it within, you know, living in school as your teacher, like property taxes go up. Last week they went up by 4%. I mean, you know, if we're considering that, like, we want to make sure, 5.1%. I mean, that's just for the two, considering for the 2 years, that's reasonable. And, yeah, I had no issue with this as well.
So it has been moved and seconded for the approval of the 26-27 central administrative salary schedule. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Approval of the 26-27 central administrative salary schedule has passed. All right. Approval of the 26-27 confidential employee salary schedule. Is there a motion?
Motion to move.
Second.
Hold on. So the motion was the approval of the 26-27 confidential employee salary has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Approval of the 26-27 confidential employee salary schedule has passed. Approval of policy number 4000, public informational program. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Has been moved and seconded for the approval of the policy number 4000, public informational program. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Approval of the policy number 4000, public informational act has passed. Approval of the NWRDC agreement renewal for 26-27. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded for the approval of the NWRDC agreement renewal of 26-27. Is there any discussion? Seeing as there is no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Let's have an approval of the NWRDC agreement renewal 2026-2027 has passed. Approval of the interlocal agreement Battleground School District 26-27. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
There's been motion and second for the approval of the interlocal agreement between Battlefield Ground School District 2026-2027. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay. Ayes have it. Approval of the interlocal agreement, Battleground School District 26-27 has passed. Approval of the out-of-state travel request, Avid Summer Institute, San Diego, California, August 3-5, or 3rd to the 5th, 2026. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, here we go. There's been motion and second of the approval of the out-of-state travel request, Avid Summer Institute, San Diego, California, from August 3rd to August 5th, 2026. Any discussion?
Is there room for a director chaperone? Oh, sorry. San Diego, come on, Coronado.
Any further discussion?
You kids gonna play.
All those in favor?
So,
Oh, wait, go ahead.
the only thing I'll add is, I don't know, based on the receipts, if you add them up, they equate to, I think, 4,200, but the request was for 4,800. I don't know if that is something that's, said reimbursements TBD by HR, so I'm not sure if that's, yeah, and maybe, I guess this is approved by the superintendent and.
Yeah, so the
Okay.
superintendent and I both reviewed it, so probably what's not included in here is all the per diem for the.
That's
roles.
fine, yeah.
So that's probably the difference between the amounts.
Okay, that very much. I was just
Yeah.
curious why they weren't adding up then.
Got it.
Okay.
The other thing to know about this is this is funded by a grant, it's not coming out of.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm fine. That's right.
Perfect. Thank you for that breakdown. Good catch. Any further?
Unfortunately, so Avid, we've been investing in Avid for many years, and the Summer Institute is one of the things that they do their training every year. And a few years ago, they did have a Summer Institute up in Seattle, which saved us a lot of money. Unfortunately, and I've talked to Avid a little bit about this, they weren't getting enough subscription up here, so now it's back to San Diego, which costs us more money, but,
More
it's the way it goes.
It was a two-leg trip, okay, it's like.
Okay, has been motion seconded, and
Sorry.
discussed for approval of the out-of-state travel request, Avid Summer Institute, San Diego, California, from August 3rd to August 5th, 2026. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Approval of the out-of-state travel request, Avid Summer Institute, San Diego, California, from August 3rd to August 5th, 2026 has passed. All right. Approval of the Performing Arts Center renovations. Any motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Seeing has been motioned and seconded for approval of the Performing Arts Center renovations.
You want to render opinion on this, Sergeant?
Is there discussion?
Last call.
Advisory vote?
Like, oh, 2 weeks. All right. It has been motion and seconded and discussed for the approval of the Performing Arts Center renovations. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. The approval of the arts or the Performing Arts Center renovations has passed. Public comment. Anyone want to close this out? You get you signed up. We'll borrow your.
Yeah, go for it.
Thank you. While you're here. Thank you very much.
So I'm gonna sign it.
Yeah, go ahead and sign, please. And if you're online and you did want to do a public comment, please raise your hand now. Whenever you're ready.
My name is Angela Meyer, and during the school year, I am the office manager at Cascade View. Unfortunately, I have to preface my statement by saying that I do fear retaliation and the loss of my job because of my comments. As Winston Churchill said, courage is what it takes to stand up and speak. Courage is also what it takes to sit down and listen. There are administrators in this room that I have the utmost respect for because they are actually doing the work. They are leading by example, and as true leaders do, they serve. They listen to those that are also doing the work. They lead selflessly, putting others before themselves. Some of the changes proposed tonight frankly scare me. We need leaders that are willing to learn and listen, learn how schools are run, listen to those doing the work, and be willing to ask questions. I would also like to remind the board that at the elementary level, there is no assistant principal. The last AP was Miss Cynthia Golston, who was shared between 3 elementary schools. I am confused as to why this position still shows on the salary schedule, since we are going into the 3rd year without an AP at the elementary level. If the board would like to speak further, I would welcome that conversation. Change can't happen without people willing to speak up. As Woodrow Wilson said, the ear of the leader must ring with the voices of the
This is a pivotal moment for the district, and the decisions that have been made are going to have a significant impact on staff and scholars. I hope the board will listen to you and ask questions of the people doing the work. A boss creates fear. A leader creates confidence. A boss affixes blame. A leader corrects mistakes. A boss knows all. A leader asks questions. A boss makes work drudgery. A leader makes it interesting. A boss is interested in himself or herself. A leader is interested in the group. The Tukwila School District is a phenomenal place to work, but we need more leaders and less bosses. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else with public comment? Anyone online? Okay. Does the chair have a motion to adjourn?
Maybe not. Second.
Okay. Motion and second to adjourn. Any discussion before we do? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Ayes have it. 7:40 is our conclusion for this meeting. Thank you, everyone.